because with no power comes no responsibility. Can't you see that the spider's busy?
Welcome back to the Nerdy Grill, and welcome to a brand new series review and episode ranking all in one video. Now, this is my first video after coming back from my little holiday that I had for about 5 or 6 days. And over that holiday, during my little bit of breaks in between, I did check out the brand new series that dropped on Amazon Prime. Both me and my fiance did. We watched a few episodes every single night. Linking to the Spider-Man universe, starring Nicolas Cage as our main hero, the Spider, or Spider-Man, or Spider-Man Noir, aka Ben Reilly, in the series Spider-Noir, an 8-episode series. Each episode is about 45 to 50 minutes long, and I must admit, it was very, very good. I'm going to be talking very, very positively in this video about this series. I thought it was fantastic. I love Spider-Noir as a character anyway. I've played as Spider-Noir in previous video games, like Shattered Dimensions. I've read some of the comics. I've seen other movies, like Into the Spider-Verse and things. So Spider-Noir was not anything unfamiliar to me. So it was quite nice to also get Nicolas Cage in on board with this, because he did a fantastic job in Into the Spider-Verse, and I thought his character was played perfectly, and he was just thoroughly entertaining to watch. As any film or TV series of Nicolas Cage in, it's going to be crazy and a lot of fun. And all 8 of these episodes were a lot of fun. In fact, in my ranking, I've not got a bad category because I didn't hate a single one of these episodes. Obviously, I liked some episodes more than others, but they were all at least good episodes. I'd at least give them, say, like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. So they were all fascinating and brilliant, and every single character was likable. Even your villains in this were likable, and even the core main villain, played by Brendan Gleeson, Silvermane, who's this big mob boss character, this crime lord, almost like a kingpin character. You hated him, but also you liked him in a way, and you kind of wanted him to get his comeuppance at the end, which he does, which is really, really fascinating and done in a brilliant way, which I should actually say that obviously this is a spoiler video, but I'm sure by now a lot of people have seen it. But if you haven't seen Spider-Noir, I highly recommend checking it out before going into this ranking video, because I will be doing brief descriptions of the episodes and basically giving you a series review as I rank the episodes, just so you can get my thoughts all in one rather than make it into 2 separate videos. One of the beauties about this series as well, as you probably know, is that you can watch it in 2 different formats. You can watch it in a True Who colour format, so you can see it in bright colours, and it makes things pop, it makes the screen pop, and it shows you things that you might not necessarily see in the noir version, which there is a black and white noir version, which is the classic style of watching Spider-Noir, and a lot of people say this is the true way to watch it, because in the video games and in like TV shows and other things like that, it was in black and white, and so it feels, and it's got that style because of the setting of it, the Prohibition era, 1930s New York, it's got that sort of style and feel to it that Spider-Noir should be watched in black and white. However, I am going to tell you now, I did actually watch it in colour. I watched the colour version. I did go back and check out the first episode in the noir black and white version just to see the difference, and I must admit there is a big difference in my personal opinion, and I think both are fascinating, but I really liked seeing the colours pop in the True Who colour version, so I thought that was really good. So when I'm reviewing it mostly based on watching it in the coloured variant of the show. But we've got 8 episodes to rank and to discuss, so let's waste no more time, because I've done my bit of introduction now, and jump into my ranking of all 8 episodes of Spider-Noir. So the very first episode we have got is, and also apologies if you see me looking down occasionally, it's because I've got some notes that I just couldn't quite remember, so I have to write them down. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm checking my notes. So the very first episode we have got is called Step Into My Office, which, you've got Ben Reilly, who is this investigator, this PI investigator, who at the start we get a bit of a montage. He sort of goes over that he is the Spider, that he's the protector of New York, but he's been gone for a while due to an incident, which we learn a little bit later, which caused him to hang up his spider hat, so to speak. And for 5 years he has just tried to live a life as just Ben Reilly, but he gets dragged back into the fray as he is approached by certain people to investigate. There's like these disappearances that's going on. He teams up with this other PI known as, I did have to write it down, known as PI Donegal, who does unfortunately get killed. But they get dragged into the fray, who's investigating this nightclub singer called Cat Hardy, or Felicia Hardy if you know, but she's known as Cat Hardy. And they're investigating the workings of the character of Silvermane. And there's these superpowered beings that's all going on. And there's this one called Addison who is taking on these powers of this fire. He's got like pyrokinetics and he can control fire and he can light his body on fire. But we learn that with these powers, every time they use these powers, they're actually damaging themselves and killing themselves slowly. So it's really, really interesting. I would say for a first episode, I'd say it is a great start to the series. I know that by the end of the episode, I fully knew the characters. You get introduced, like I said, to Ben Reilly, played by Nicolas Cage, who does a fantastic job. You've got, you get introduced to the character of Robbie Robertson, who's this photographer who's being kicked out of the Daily Bugle, and he spends the series trying to get his way back in, which he does by the end. You have also got, you introduced to Cat Hardy, who's this nightclub singer who is under Silvermane's thumb, so to speak, but she also has a romantic interest with the character known as Flint Marko. And if you know anything about Flint Marko, you know he is the Sandman, and he is fantastic in this series as well. We get introduced to Ben's secretary, Janet, who is a brilliant character, and she is really, really funny, and I love Janet to pieces. And then, like I said, we get introduced to other characters within the show as well. But yeah, as the series goes on, you see the relationships proper bond between all of our main cast, and it is just absolutely brilliant. In episode 2 then, which is Tread Lightly, we do see Ben take up the mantle of the Spider once again, and it culminates with him basically threatening Silvermane and to leave Ben Reilly alone, and basically just to he won't hurt him, he won't damage him in any way, shape or form. But this does backfire as it causes Silvermane, who was going to be basically caught by the police, to back off, so to speak, because he actually does listen to the Spider. Because the relationship that Silvermane and the Spider seem to have in this series is really, really interesting. I mean, to try and compare it, I'd say if you're a Doctor Who fan, I'd say it was very much like the early days of the Doctor and the Master, the Roger Delgado, John Pertwee era. They don't like each other, but also at the same time, they have a form of respect for each other, and you can get that through the series. There is a lot of respect for these characters. I do think this is also a great episode. I do thoroughly enjoy episode 2, and I love the fight scene with the Spider taking out Silvermane's goons on top of the car. I think the colours really pop for here. I just think it is fascinating and brilliant. It is a fantastic episode, and the pacing, I must say, for this series, I know it sounds a bit jumbled all over the place, but the pacing for this series is really, really good. There wasn't an episode where I thought this dragged on for too long. You know, episodes being 45 minutes to about 50 minutes long, you know, they never felt like they were nearly an hour long. They always felt like they were very quick-paced half-an-hour episodes. We felt like we got through the series quite quick. But it was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely loved it. And so Tread Lightly was also a great episode. I can't deny that at all. Then we have got Double Cross. So basically, so far in the series, Silvermane's plans are sort of being leaked. You know, things are sort of going wrong. It's not going according to plan. And so they discover that there's actually a spy in the midst. You know, obviously we as the audience know technically that it is Cat Hardy who is the spy, but they try to push that off. So basically the whole episode is basically you've got Silvermane who's basically hired Ben Reilly in order to go and find this spy, try and see what happens. And by the end, it does all culminate together, and Silvermane does kill who he thinks is the rat in the midst, but actually that's not the case. Now, don't get me wrong, I think this is a good episode. It wasn't my favourite episode of the series. I would probably say it's on the lower end of that spectrum for me, but it was still a solid episode and ended on an interesting cliffhanger with one of Silvermane's goons getting killed, but then also he kills another one of his goons, but we don't actually see that until the very next episode, which obviously if it was on a week-by-week basis, that would have been like, ooh, who did he shoot there? Because we had some of our core characters in the room at the same time, and did he actually twig it? Because Silvermane is both super clever, but also he misses what's right in front of him, and I think Brendan Gleeson does such a good job at portraying Silvermane as this all-powerful character but at the end of the day, he is still quite weak in a world filled with superpowered beings. And I thought that was really, really good. Episode 4, then, we've got A Mistake That I Will Never Make Again. This one, we sort of get a bit of more of a deep dive into Kat Hardy and also Ben Reilly. They sort of start to form this sort of bond. We sort of get a bit of a backstory into Ben. Like, Ben was this like ex-soldier in this war in France, and all the superpowered beings, from Sandman to Lonnie Lincoln's Tombstone, who's also in the series, to this character called Megawatt. All these superpowered beings are also like ex-soldiers that he ends up saving during the war, who obviously then Ben obviously tries to change his name. He becomes Ben Reilly. He hides out. He doesn't want to be discovered. But we learn about some of the trauma that Ben has suffered through that. We get to see that in this episode. And I think it's just really, really fascinating. And all through this, like I said, you get to see little bits and pieces of their relationship flourishing, which ends with Kat sort of finally discovering that Ben is the Spider, and she does it in the most typical superhero way possible. She is out of a window, leaning out of a window, and she just throws herself off of it, basically like, yeah, you're going to catch me, because if you're the Spider, you're not going to let me die. And I think that was done in such a good fashion, and I really, really like that. So for me, it was another great episode of the series, and ended so perfectly and so sweetly. And it was nice for Ben to sort of get that sort of moment of truth, that moment of, because he throughout the whole series, he feels like he doesn't deserve happiness, he doesn't deserve love, because obviously we discover that one of the reasons why he gave up the mantle of being the Spider is the fact that he lost his partner, lost his wife, Ruby, and he blames himself for it, because he was supposed to be out. He could have saved her, but he was absolutely plastered and drunk, and so couldn't get to her in time. She was like handcuffed to a car in the river, and he couldn't save her, and was too late. So he blames himself for that. So he hangs up the mantle of being the Spider. Then we move on to episode 5, Betrayal, where by the end of the episode we find out that Kat betrays Ben to this Dr. Faber character who we're introduced to, who we find out she's the one who's been experimenting on these superpowered beings of Flint and Megawatt and Lonnie, etc., and hundreds of other people. We learn that she's been experimenting on these people in order to try. We find out it's to try and find a cure for them, or in particular her son, who's this elderly gentleman who we thought is just her assistant, but actually we learn it's his son, who has got his mutation is that he's rapidly aging. So he's actually, I think he says he's like 36 or something, but he looks like he's probably in his 70s. You know, he's a lot older than what he makes out, and he's constantly aging. So she's trying to find a way of doing that. And we discover that, obviously, in typical Spider-Man fashion, a bit like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where we find out that whereas everyone else who they experimented on and got these powers either dies after using their powers for so long, Ben was like a successful experiment. And so if we use his blood, then we might be able to find a cure for everyone else and reverse the process, because he was able to be a stabled version of it. And so Felicia, who is in love, or Kat as I should call her, is in love with Flint Marko for the series. They got this on and off fling, but Flint, because of his condition, doesn't feel like he belongs with Kat, and for her own safety, and, you know, for the sake of he's going to die if he keeps using his powers, there's no point in them being together. He goes back and forth into working for Silvermane, but Felicia won't give up on him, or Kat. I keep calling her Felicia, but she's just known as Kat. And so she gives up Ben Reilly's identity to Faber. And so then we learn that probably in the next episode, Faber is going to hunt down Ben Reilly and probably capture him. And it is also a very great episode. I love it. I love some of the interactions between Ben and Felicia, and the character of Dr. Faber is so cool, especially when Robbie goes to interview her and basically gets under her skin because she's trying to hide these secrets, but now she's being hunted down, and I think that's just fascinating. Then we've got episode 6 of the series, which is known as Nightmare on the Gurney. Now this episode is going up here, so like we predicted, Ben's identity has been revealed to Dr. Faber, and so she sends her son to go and speak to him, basically capture him, and he reveals his mutation of being old to Ben. He sort of reveals to Ben that he knows who he is because of Kat and this, that, and the other. When Ben initially refuses to help, he then injects him with this like sedative that knocks him out. They drag him away to the secret labs and basically start experimenting on him. And all through the episode, we sort of get flashbacks to what happened to Ben. It's basically a filler episode that's not a filler episode. It's more of a flashback sort of episode that reflects on the past. You see Ben, how he first got his powers. You see all the different experiments that's going on. And I just love the relationship you have between Faber and her son. I think, because he wants to be by his mother's side, but you can tell that the methods that she's using, he doesn't fully agree with. And the son is just such a nice character who does end up helping Ben to escape by the end. Whereas on the other side of things, you've got obviously characters like Janet and all who are trying to find him and locate him. You've got Silvermane, who's obviously got the superpowered beings of Megawatt and Flint and Lonnie, who are going to this lab to try and find out what it's all about and see if there is a supposed cure, this, that, and the other, which unfortunately doesn't end up being the case. Well, it is, but they get a bit too trigger happy and end up killing the doctor character and the son and burning the whole lab to the ground. After she managed to make a small vial of the antidote, which does actually work, and it does actually cure her son's aging, so he becomes young again. And Ben ends up taking that antidote because we got to have the typical thing of a Spider-Man who's questioning himself, questioning his double life, and so he might want to go to just being regular Ben Reilly and leave the Spider behind. So I like that dilemma in a superhero flick. I think that is also really good. Which that dilemma does continue on then into episode 7, titled Nobody's Hero. And I love how Ben, through the first half of the story, is just drinking his sorrows away. And he starts fighting people in bars, who start slagging off the Spider. Despite him saying that he kind of wants the Spider gone, you can tell that that's not actually the case and not actually true. And I think it is just a fascinating and great episode. And you can see all the pieces starting to come together now in these episodes. But yeah, and by the end we see that obviously Silvermane, because through the series, Silvermane a couple of times has sort of teamed up with Ben Reilly in order to be the link between him and Spider-Man, a bit like J. Jonah Jameson does with Peter Parker in taking photos of Spider-Man, getting that story. Silvermane connects with Ben Reilly in order to, bring the Spider to him. And that obviously all culminates then in the season finale titled The Man in the Mask, which, can I just say, is a very, very good finale. I really enjoy the finale episode, The Man in the Mask, which mostly all takes place in the nightclub, with Ben basically being taken to the nightclub by Silvermane's crew, and Silvermane basically saying, like, look, I need you to bring the Spider here. And they have a great phone conversation where obviously Ben's supposed to be the Spider, but he gets Robbie to pretend to be the Spider. And all the secrets and all come out at this point. Kat's revealed to be the spy or the rat. You have Flint and Megawatt and all at each other's throats, because in the previous episode we find that Lonnie got cured using the antidote, which we know works, which is quite nice, because we were quite surprised. I thought Lonnie Lincoln would have properly become fully Tombstone in this series, but no, he got his happy ever after. But obviously it all culminates in a big battle between Sandman and all, and I think it's just absolutely brilliant and fascinating. Flint does end up getting cured in the end. Megawatt supposedly dies. We don't really know what happens to him. Silvermane gets killed by Kat, and they do all live happily ever after. Ben finally recognises Janet as a true equal, and so changes his little detective company from Ben Reilly's investigative services to, I think it's like Reilly and Louise, so they're finally a proper partnership, and I love the relationship that grows between them. It is such a fascinating series, but also Ben finally accepts his role of being the Spider, and I think that is really, really good too. I really hope there will be a season 2, because I think this show is brilliant, is perfect, and I'd say as a show, as an overall ranking of the show, I'm going to give the show an 8.5 to maybe even a 9 out of 10. I really, really like this. This is like the year of Spider-Man, because we got this series, we've got Brand New Day, and I believe season 2 of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is due out either right at the tail end of this year or maybe the start of next year, but I think it's the end of this year. So we got a lot of Spider-Man content this year. And I think all the actors in this are brilliant. I think it sets good tone, good atmosphere, fantastic intro sequence, by the way, to the show as well. Really love that. I love all the plot lines. Nothing feels like it drags for too long. And I'd highly recommend watching this series. You don't even have to be a true fan of Spider-Man or a massive superhero lover to watch this series, because it's a Spider-Man show second, as it is like a crime drama or a noir style series. Spider-Man, you know, pops up here and there, and obviously you've got characters like Flint Marko and stuff, but you don't really... I sometimes forget that it's a Spider-Man show to a degree, and I think that's beautiful, is it's a show that's blended for lovers of all different genres, and I think that's what this show does really, really well. It is fascinating, and I'm sorry this was a bit of a jumbled mess of a review, but my brain was just so fried with this series, and I just had to get out there and talk about it. I might do a more constructive review of it later on down the line, but I just thought I had to get my initial thoughts out after finishing the series yesterday. But that is going to be my ranking and mini review of Spider-Noir. I hope you'd enjoy this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up, and comment down below your thoughts on Spider-Noir, and subscribe if you are new. But for now, this is the Nerdy Grill signing off. I hope you've had an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.